What happens when two officers cross the line and mess with the wrong person? Stay tuned for a story that's equal parts shocking and inspiring. You won't want to miss this. It's a sunny afternoon in downtown Atlanta, and a young African American woman named Susan is sitting on a bench, patiently waiting for her husband. But her peaceful moment is interrupted when two police officers approach her, questioning her for no reason. What starts as a routine day turns into a blatant case of racial profiling. Little do they know, her husband is Captain Anthony Wilson, the newly appointed captain of the Atlanta Police Department. This story is packed with suspense, frustration, and ultimately, triumph, as justice takes the spotlight. Let's dive in. It's a sunny afternoon in downtown Atlanta. The streets are alive with activity, but Susan, a young African American woman, sits calmly on a bench, her eyes occasionally glancing at her phone. She's waiting for her husband, Captain Anthony Wilson, who has just been appointed as the new captain of the Atlanta Police Department. As she sits, Susan can't help but feel a deep sense of pride. Her husband has worked tirelessly to climb the ranks, overcoming countless obstacles to reach this milestone. She smiles to herself, thinking about the years of dedication and sacrifice that have led to this moment. The warm sun and bustling city create a peaceful atmosphere around her, a fitting backdrop for the joy and pride she feels. She's honored to stand beside Anthony, not just as his wife, but as his partner in life and his biggest supporter. But this tranquil moment is about to take a sharp turn. Two police officers, Johnson and Thompson, come into view, walking in her direction. They carry themselves with an air of authority, but there's something about their gaze that feels off. Susan notices them, but she brushes off the unease, reminding herself that she's done nothing wrong. What happens next will shatter the peaceful atmosphere and test the strength of their resolve. Stay tuned for how this unfolds. As Susan sits quietly on the bench, her peaceful moment is interrupted by two police officers, Johnson and Thompson, walking directly toward her. Their expressions are hard, their eyes scanning her with unwarranted suspicion. Susan feels a twinge of unease but tries to remain composed, reminding herself that she's done nothing wrong. "Excuse me, miss," Officer Johnson says gruffly, his tone laced with authority. "What are you doing here?" Susan looks up, startled by his abruptness, but she forces a polite smile. "I'm just waiting for my husband. He's running a bit late," she says calmly, hoping to diffuse any tension. Officer Thompson narrows his eyes. "And what's your husband's name?" he asks, his tone dripping with skepticism. Susan feels her nerves tighten, but she holds her ground. "His name is Captain Anthony Wilson. He's the new captain of the Atlanta Police Department," she replies. The officers exchange a glance, their skepticism turning into thinly veiled arrogance. "Well, miss," Johnson sneers, "we're going to need you to stand up and turn around. We need to search you." Susan's eyes widen in disbelief. "What? Why? I haven't done anything wrong," she protests, her voice steady but firm. Thompson steps closer, his hand resting ominously on his gun. "Ma'am, please cooperate. We have reason to believe you might be involved in suspicious activity." Susan's heart pounds as anger and humiliation wash over her. She knows exactly what's happening. She's being racially profiled. But she also knows she needs to stay calm. Slowly she stands, raising her hands in surrender, allowing the officers to search her. As they pat her down, Susan's mind races. Then, her phone buzzes in her pocket. She quickly retrieves it and sees a text from Anthony. "Hey, babe. Running a bit late. Where are you?" Her fingers fly over the screen as she types, "I'm on the corner of 5th and Main. Two officers are harassing me. Please hurry." Hitting send, Susan feels a flicker of relief. She knows Anthony will be there soon, but the tension around her continues to escalate. The officers finish their search, but their hostile stares linger, as if daring her to challenge their authority. The suspense builds as Susan waits, knowing the situation is far from over. Just as the tension reaches its peak, a sleek black SUV pulls up to the curb. The door swings open, and out steps Anthony Wilson, his posture confident and composed. Despite his calm demeanor, Susan instantly recognizes the glint of anger simmering beneath his surface. His sharp gaze locks onto the two officers as he strides toward them with purpose. "Can I help you, officers?" Anthony's deep voice cuts through the air, commanding attention. The officers exchange a quick, nervous glance, suddenly unsure of themselves. Johnson, the older of the two, steps forward, trying to maintain his authority. "We were just doing a routine check, Captain," he stammers. "This woman was acting suspiciously." Anthony's eyes narrow, briefly flicking to Susan, who stands quietly by his side, before returning to the officers. "Suspiciously?" he repeats, his voice dangerously calm. "And what exactly was she doing that warranted your suspicion?" Thompson chimes in, his tone defensive. "She was just sitting here, not doing anything. But she looked out of place, so we thought we'd check her out." Anthony's expression turns glacial, his voice cold and precise. "You didn't know who she was because you didn't bother to find out. You saw a black woman sitting on a bench, and you assumed she was up to no good. That's not policing, officers. That's racial profiling." The weight of Anthony's words hangs heavy in the air. Johnson and Thompson visibly shrink under his scrutiny, their earlier arrogance replaced by shame. The power dynamics have shifted entirely, and it's clear they've made a grave mistake. As the tension lingers, Anthony's phone buzzes in his pocket. He steps back slightly, pulling it out to answer. "Wilson here," he says curtly. Susan watches as his expression darkens, his jaw tightening with each passing second. "I see. Thank you, Chief," he finally replies before ending the call and turning back to the officers. "There's been a pattern with you two," Anthony says, his voice cold and commanding. "The chief has received multiple complaints about your conduct: racial profiling, harassment, and abuse of power. And now this." Johnson and Thompson exchange panicked glances, but Anthony doesn't let up. "Effective immediately, you are both suspended pending an investigation into your actions. Turn in your badges and guns. Now." The officers stammer in protest, but Anthony cuts them off. "You should have thought about this before harassing an innocent person. This is not how we serve and protect." Reluctantly, Johnson and Thompson unclip their badges and holsters, their hands trembling as they hand them over. Their faces burn with a mixture of shame and frustration as they slink away, heads bowed, leaving Anthony and Susan standing together. With the officers gone, Anthony turns to Susan, his stern expression softening into one of concern. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. As the officers retreat, Anthony steps closer to Susan, his stern demeanor softening. He gently places his hand on her shoulder, his voice filled with genuine concern. "Are you okay, babe?" he asks, searching her face for any sign of distress. Susan looks up at him, her heart swelling with both relief and gratitude. She nods slowly, the weight of the situation finally lifting. "Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks to you." Her voice quivers slightly, but there's a strong undercurrent of pride. "I'm so proud of you, Anthony. You stood up for me, for what's right." Anthony smiles, his eyes warm with love. "That's what husbands are for," he says, his voice full of assurance. The moment is brief, but it speaks volumes. In the face of adversity, Anthony didn't just protect his wife. He made a stand for justice, dignity, and the power of love. He showed Susan, and everyone around them, what it truly means to fight for what's right, even when it's personal. This moment wasn't just about a husband defending his wife. It was about setting a standard for what real justice should look like. This story highlights the critical importance of addressing racial profiling and holding law enforcement accountable for their actions. It shows us that standing up for what's right, especially when it's personal, can make a difference. Anthony's actions not only protect his wife, but they also challenge a system that needs reform, urging us all to reflect on how we treat others and how we can work together to create a fairer society. If this story moved you, share it with your friends and start a conversation about justice, equality, and the importance of standing up for what's right. Together, we can continue to push for positive change in our communities. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that shed light on the power of love, justice, and courage. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay kind, and let's create a better world together.